Welcome back to the Beer Junkies. Today we are brewing a Munich-styled Dunkel. The Dunkel is very special to me. It is the first beer that I ever designed back when I started my professional brewing career. The Dunkel is known for its rich, deep malt character with plenty of bready and toasty notes. It is a very malt-forward beer, but it is still very, very drinkable. So it's a wonderful style to have on tap all year long. We're going to walk you through our ingredients, the malts we use, the water profile, the hops, and the yeast. We're also going to walk you through our process, the mashing, mash out, the sparge, the boil, the whirlpool, knockout, fermentation, and at the very end we're going to walk you through that taste test. So let's get started. The water profile for this Dunkel is 50 parts per million of calcium, 27 parts per million of sodium, 70 parts per million of sulfate, and 55 parts per million of chloride. To do that, I'm adding calcium chloride, gypsum, and Epsom salt to both the mash water and the sparge water. Depending on how much roasted malt you use, you may want to consider using a pH buffer in the form of bicarbonates. You can use either pickling lime or baking soda, whichever one you have. I would recommend plugging that into your water profile calculator to see how much you need to add to keep that pH right around 5.4. Right now I have the mash water heating up and filling up to the right temperature and volume. So while that's getting ready, let's go over the grains we're going to be using. The starting gravity for this Dunkel is 1050, and to get there, I start with about 65 to 70% of Munich malt for the base. We'll add a very rich and malty flavor. To that, I add around 15 to 20% of a dark Munich malt, just to add a little bit more malt intensity. Now, I do also add 6 to 8% of Victory malt to bump up that toastiness just a little bit. And then finally, my color adjustment. For the first time I made this, I used Special X at a rate of about 6 to 8%. But if you don't want to use that, you can use Carafa 2 from Weyermann. Both will be great options. That Carafa 2 will give you a little bit more roast, while that Special X will give you a little bit more caramel, and a little bit more of a nutty character. Either one's great. For the recipe today, I'm going to be using that Carafa 2. The mash water is ready, so let's mash in. As normal, this is our mashing setup, pulling wort from the bottom of the mash tun through the false bottom, pushing it through our pump, through the Herms coil to maintain our temperature, and then we recirculate the whole time to set up our grain bed filter. Dunkels are traditionally made by either decoction or step mashing at rests of 122, 148, and 156 degrees Fahrenheit. You can get by with a single infusion mash at 152 degrees Fahrenheit for about 60 minutes, but you may not get quite the malt depth that you would if you decoction mash, giving you that Maillard reaction. We have about 20 minutes left in our last rest, and then we'll be back for mash out. We just finished our final rest, so now we are mashing out. With the same setup, we are pulling wort from the bottom of the mash tun, pushing it through our pump, through the Herms coil to maintain our temperature. But as normal, we are now raising the temperature on our hot liquor tank to raise our mash temperature up to 168 degrees for mash out over the course of about 15 minutes. Once we get to 168 degrees, we will begin to sparge. We just got to 168 degrees, so now we are sparging, pulling wort from the bottom of the mash tun, pushing it through our pump, which is now directed towards the boil kettle, which is heating up as it fills up. At the same time, we are pulling off our sparge water from the hot liquor tank, pushing it through our water pump, and rinsing the residual sugars left in the grains. We just got to a boil, so we will boil for 90 minutes. But while this is going, let's go over the hops that we're going to be using. The hopping for the Dunkel is very simple. I like to use middle fruit, but you can use any noble hop. I add around 20 to 22 IBUs worth at the 60-minute mark. And if you do want a little bit of spicy herbal aroma, you can add half an ounce per 5 gallons at the flame out. But that's totally optional. We just finished the boil, so now we are whirlpooling, pulling wort from the bottom of the boil kettle, pushing it through our pump with tangential input to create a vortex inside the boil kettle to pull all of the hops and proteins to the center so we do not put them in the fermenter during knockout. We just finished our whirlpool, so now we are knocking out. We are pulling wort from the bottom of the boil kettle, pushing it through our pump, through the heat exchanger. We have our oxygen being injected, which is kind of tough to see with its color. And then we are going through at about 60. I'll need to slow that down to get it closer to about 52 degrees for that pitching temperature for this lager yeast. And we're going all the way down here. You can see that we are filling up that fermenter and pushing out all the excess air. For our Dunkel, we use the German lager yeast from White Labs. I'll pitch this at 52 degrees Fahrenheit and let that free rise up to 54 degrees as fermentation starts. I'll hold it here for about a week or until we are 4 specific gravity points away from our terminal gravity. For this beer, that's 1020 with a terminal gravity of about 1016. From here, I will let that free rise up to at least 60 degrees Fahrenheit, preferably closer to 72 degrees for that diacetyl rest. I'll hold it here for at least 48 hours. Now I'll begin to step it down 4 degrees a day until we get to 33 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't do it all at once. I step it down 4 degrees a day because that yeast still has some work to do and I don't want to shock it. Once we get to 33 degrees Fahrenheit, we will transfer it to our bright tank, carbonate it to about 2.5 volumes, keg it, let it lager for at least 12 weeks, and then enjoy. All right, this is what we've got. It is a beautiful, very dark ruby color with a tan head for the smell. It's got a very rich maltiness coming through. A little bit of toastiness, kind of like toasted bread. But that rich malty character is the star for the taste. Very similar to the aroma. Very deep, rich, malty flavor. A little bit of toast on the back end. It's a balancing bitterness, so it's not sweet, but it's also not very dry. It is very refreshing. Gosh, this is one of my favorite styles. If you're over the age of 21, we do not condone underage drinking. Please drink responsibly. Cheers. If you would like to see more brewing content like this, make sure you click that subscribe button right below. And let me know what you'd like to see next in the comments. Cheers.